All right, everybody ready? Cool. All right, so we are going to be discussing very hard-hitting topic today with tons of questions on the boards about it. It's actually more just going to be a fun lecture to watch videos of people doing drugs. So it should be pretty easy. I'm not sure why my slides are cut off there, but oh well. All right, so we're going to talk about what we can call legal highs. Lots of different terms for these, but I'll get to what that is. First have a mental question answer. Do not answer this. You have administration very high up in the hospital sitting right behind you who's not paying attention. But in your heads, who has used an illicit substance in the last month? Mentally raise your hands. Cool. Oh, don't answer this question. Who has who has used an illicit substance in the last year? All right, raise your hands in your brain. Good. All right, so that was a nice quick survey that we took. But if we took, say, a whole audience of people and let's look statistically at usage in the general public, I think it's kind of interesting. So if you look at this, took a whole audience of people, and surveyed them, it would find that 50% of people aged 12 and over have illicitly used drugs in their lifetime. When we say illicit, the definition of illicit technically is something like a controlled substance that you are using illegally. Now that gets a little weird when you're talking about legal highs because all these substances are technically legal, but I think it's important to understand in the general public how many people have actually utilized a illicit substance in their lifetime. Then 21.4% of people 12 and over have used or misused prescription drugs within the last year. It's a significant amount of people. And 13% of Americans 12 and over have used drugs in the last month. So again, when I look and I've given this lecture to bigger audiences, when I look out in the audience, I know 10 to 20% of that audience statistically probably has used an illicit substance in the last month. And so we have to keep that in mind when we think about these quote unquote illicit substances and think about the patients who utilize them. Many of us in the audience may have done that, or your friend may have used it as well. So we have to, when we start talking about taboo subjects, we have to realize that just because we don't say we're doing this stuff doesn't mean it doesn't actually happen. And we have to take that into account when we're thinking about these patients. So drug usership among Americans 12 and older, you can see the blue is used in a lifetime, the green is used in last year, and the bottom blue is used in last month. So 12% of folks in this survey used marijuana in the last month. Cocaine, lifetime 14%. So pretty high percentages when we're talking about some of these substances that we sometimes frown upon in patients. And most important, and I don't know why my slides are doing this, but I think it's very important to understand when we talk about things like marijuana and other substances and how we put them in this whole taboo category. You guys know how much damage alcohol does to society. We've worked in a trauma center. So it's amazing that we kind of put alcohol on this high pedestal of this fun substance that we can all legally imbibe in. But the damage alcohol does to society is pretty mind blowing. You step back and look at it. So we have to think about that when we're seeing patients. We tend to separate this found down the street with a needle in their arm from the guy who just fell at home while sipping whiskey. And I promise you, we treat these patients very, very differently when they come into the hospital. You're kind of joking with old guy, oh man, you had too much whiskey and fell down and hit your head. You're so ridiculous. And the wife's giggling in the corner and stuff. But it's the same damn thing as the guy who's found passed out in the alleyway with a needle in his arm. Both these people are using substances, illegal or legal, for the same reasons: to escape life, to just feel something good, to just have the end of the day and feel a little bit better. They're all using the substances for the same reason. So we can't classify these patients differently and treat them differently. It's all the same damn thing. So it's all a point of perspective. I mean, if you look at this picture here, you gain a perspective of this patient and you start building some sort of bias in your mind about it when it's just Photoshopped from a different photo of, you look at this picture like, oh man, that guy's living his best life. He's out on the coast of California. He's smoking some pot. He's living his best life. But again, it's all perspective. So remember, substances, legal, not legal, whatever it is, we're all using it for the same reasons. So try not to build your biases against people just because how they look or what substances they're using. So we're going to go through a case, and this will cover some legal highs. So this is our case here. He's a dude brought into ECC. He is found unresponsive. His blood pressure, you can see his heart rate. His respiratory rate's very depressed. He's hypoxic. And we're not really sure what's going on, so we do what we usually do, give him naloxone. We blow it out with way too big of a dose. He gets pissed off and wants to run out, wants to fight you. and then you put him right back down with ketamine. So highs and lows, and now he's back down. And now we're kind of thinking, what could this guy possibly have taken? Well, luckily his bros show up and they say that he took something that he bought from a head shop a few years ago. So what they're insinuating is whatever he took that caused him to be essentially be in a narcotic coma state was a legal substance that he was able to buy from a head shop down the street. So then that kind of gets us thinking about what could this possibly be. So that's part of our job as almost detectives is try to figure out. A lot of times it's not that important, but we do want to gain some insight into what could possibly be in this patient's system. So now we're starting to talk about things that can actually be purchased from a store, and that kind of makes our idea of what could be going on a little bit different. And so we're going to talk about what we call legal highs. And the reason they're called legal highs is because they're technically not controlled by FDA or state laws. And there's many reasons for this. Sometimes there are substance, very often there's substance that very smart street chemists have just been able to take the illicit, illegal substance, switch a few carbon bonds around, have the same effect, but now technically based on the chemical structure, they're now technically legal. And this is how a lot of these things come around. Or they're from other plants or of the substances which are very, very similar to the illegal substance and have the same effects, but by state statute and federal law, they are not illegal. And so this is becoming very much more common. What's up, buddy? And so we have to be aware of it. But the other problem with it is there's no regulation whatsoever. And there's not much regulation on illicit substances. But this is folks really making this stuff up in their kitchen, in wherever, and God knows what's in it. So especially in the age of fentanyl and other issues, we really have to keep this on our radar as something that can have some profound effects. What's up? What's up? Am I not sharing? No. My bad, dude. Am I sharing now? I'm not sharing now. Can you hear me now? Now we should be good. You didn't miss much other than my favorite slide. I'll give you 10 seconds to look at it. All right, so now we're going to start moving on. So again, that's what we're talking about is quote unquote legal highs. And we're going to get into some different categories and classifications of what you could expect in these patients. All right, so the ones we're going to talk about, there's 1,000 out there to talk about, but we're going to specifically focus on some of your more common ones. And this is going to be methoxetamine, cathinones, kratom, which many of us have probably heard about, salvia, and cannabinoids. So again, there are so many more to talk about, but these are the general ones we're going to talk about. More importantly for this lecture is that we're going to use a lot of videos of people doing a lot of drugs. That is very available now on YouTube. And I actually like this site called Drugs Lab because instead of just idiots doing stuff on a street corner, these are some folks out of the Netherlands, and they specifically set up a semi-controlled environment where they interview people, they give them the substances, they have vital sign monitors on them, and they just have the camera on them. They have someone kind of talking to them, hey, what are you experiencing? What are you feeling? So it's kind of cool in that regard from a physician standpoint to be like, oh, this is what my patient might be experiencing. Oh, okay, now this is how much this is like meth or how much this is like ketamine. And so it's kind of interesting to actually see them going through it in a semi-scientific manner, an objective manner, to get a good perspective of what's going on. So first off, we're going to talk about methoxetamine. What do you think methoxetamine mimics? Ketamine. Yeah, it's got a very similar name. So it mimics ketamine. And you can see in the structure here, it's all targeting the NMDA receptor. So phenylcyclidine, PCP, is essentially a precursor of ketamine, is originally an anesthetic, and that's where ketamine kind of came from. And so you can see methoxetamine on the right, they all have very similar chemical structures. And all of our drugs and substances, our effects are all coming from a chemical structure. So that's where methoxetamine actually has very similar effects of ketamine. So we all know the effects of ketamine that we're going for, dissociation. And so when I talk about like partial dissociation with ketamine, how we should avoid that in the ED, that's what people are trying to get on the street and in the clubs. That is your party dose of ketamine, where you have a partial dissociation, you're having augmentation of reality, but you're still able to keep it together and function and party and have a good time. So as we'd expect, a lot of these substances come in many different forms. So with each substance, and I'm going to apologize as someone who harps on PowerPoint ergonomics, this PowerPoint is grossly out of date. And so the fonts get all screwy. But I'm going to talk about the general effects, how you can take this medication, but just know there's a wide range of variability with all these drugs. So this one here, you can insufflate through the nose. You can make like a dropper or a tincture and use it. You can inject. You can smoke. Pretty much all these substances. If you have an orifice, you can put it in that orifice. Unfortunately, they come in pill form. It comes in powder form, but you can obviously melt it down, break down whatever into any form. It's a pretty quick onset, about 10 to 20 minutes. And then you're going to get about 2 to 3 hours of effect, which is pretty similar to what we see clinically with ketamine. So we all know the effects of ketamine. So methoxetamine is going to be similar. We get tachycardia, we get hypertension, hyperthermic. So this is where your patients, you guys talking about hyperthermia earlier, this is what kills patients in terms of overdose of these medications is they start cooking their brains. That's really cardiac effects and hyperthermia is what kills these patients. But what they're looking for is euphoria, a sense of calm, some distortion. It can obviously be a scary experience. Someone's not used to it. They might come in seeing those purple elephants and freaking out. You get your hallucinations, your dissociation. So the goal of the medication can also be pretty scary for people as well. So here's our first video of someone taking methoxetamine. This is all in Dutch, but it's still fun.
Nou, een beetje. Niet zo zwaar, meer licht dan zwaar misschien. Want het verdoofd is, misschien voelt het zo gek, weet je wel? Dat je bijna niet door hebt dat je loopt, maar je loopt wel. Weet je wel?
So you can see he's having a good time, but he's tachycardic, but otherwise looking well. He's in a partial dissociative state. You can tell he has augmented reality. We're still able to hold conversations. He's just having a good time. So that's what you would expect from a good dose of methoxetamine. Obviously, if they're pushing their doses farther, you'd expect more full dissociation of someone who could be in a completely comatose state. So cathinones, also known as bath salts. I remember when bath salts first came around and people were wondering who figured out that you could just eat bath salts and they make you high. But obviously these aren't the same as bath salts that we get from the store. This is a whole different ballgame. This is essentially a combination of lots of different, can be a combination of lots of different substances, but in general, they're classified under the cathinone. And it's very similar if you were around at all in medicine for the flakka epidemic. That's kind of still going on, but got really bad for a couple of years. Miami was the flakka capital of the world for a while, and people were coming in just jacked out of their minds. Just violent, completely altered state, pretty scary stuff, and a lot of that had to do with flakka. So flakka kind of within the same group of substances that you can expect with bath salts. And this is from the khat plant, and it's a synthetic form of cathinone, which is a stimulant derived from the khat plant. So a lot of these substances are synthetic formations of what you would derive from this plant here. So there's lots of different ones, as you can expect. There's lots of different things we're dealing with. None of these classifications are just one drug usually. It's usually lots of different things that all have similar structures. And this is where it's interesting to follow some of this because in a lot of these classifications, the FDA or the federal government or the state government says, okay, this substance here with this chemical structure is illegal, and then someone comes along and says, okay, I'll add a sulfate onto it, and boom, it's not illegal anymore. So it's interesting to see how the street chemists kind of keep up with this and keep making new formations of it. So you can kind of think of it as a mix of cocaine, meth, and MDMA. So that's quite a hell of a trifecta of substances there, but you can kind of get a crossover of all those different effects. So as with most of these, it come many different forms, come in a pill form, come in a powder form that can be used in different ways. You can nasally smoke, inject, come in pills. There's actually eyedroppers of the stuff that you can put in your eyes, have ocular administration. A pretty quick onset, 20 to 30 minutes, usually lasting 4 to 6 hours. And as with most of these, you get tachycardia, you get hypertension, you get hyperthermic as well. On the right side, we have combativeness, self-mutilation. So especially with flakka, we saw some people coming in pretty jacked. I mean, that's that famous story out of Miami, which is, it wasn't the whole story but essentially some homeless guy was eating someone's face off. And that was from flakka. And we had a lot of folks like that coming in very violent. I remember the patient that we saw a couple times at ECC, and he came in and had killed his girlfriend over a video game. And then he became our repeat offender in ECC as a jail patient. But a lot of this was the people were kind of sort of normal. But then they did these horrific things on Flacca because it just started hallucinating beyond anything they had ever experienced, plus having stuff like the effects of meth and cocaine on board. So a lot of bad stuff was happening. But what people are looking for, the positives, are looking for the increased alertness, the euphoria, the sociability. It's like MDMA as a party drug and a therapeutic drug, breaking down social barriers, allowing yourself to open up to other folks. Here's our video. So this is actually someone taking amphetamine because drug labs didn't have a video of bath salts.
Ja, op zoek. Nee. Ga eerst even rustig zitten. Neem wat water. Nou, als je uithaalt, dan is het toch niet zo heel... Ja, je gaat langer door. En je wil misschien. Ja?
Because he's just kind of jacked. Heart rate 190. He just can't get comfortable. He's doing that kind of MDMA teeth grind. He's just not having a great time. Looks kind of uncomfortable. But again, that's from amphetamine. But you expect kind of the same things from Flacca. Again, those of us who are around for Flacca and when bath salts were big, people just coming in hypertensive health, tacky at 200, just ready to fight. Can kind of get pretty scary. Salvia. What was that? Excuse me? That's what incognito mode's for. All right, so salvia. It's from Salvia divinorum. And this has some interesting receptor effects. It's kappa opioid receptor, causes hallucinations, also cause respiratory depression. So it's an opioid receptor. So we got to think about some of those negative effects that it has as well. So it can be smoked, and it comes on, a couple of these substances come on pretty damn fast, like within the seconds, and they only last a couple minutes. So it's really interesting. If you have any insight into like DMT, it's one of the substances that comes on in seconds, and minutes later it's gone. So it's kind of crazy that substances can have that profound of an effect on the human brain. So it can be smoked, it can be ingested, and this is usually just kind of for a real rapid, quick high that will wear off. So our negative effects on top, we get tachycardic, we get hallucinations, distortedness, giddiness. This can be negative, positive based on what you're feeling that day. But what people take it for is creativity, calm, well-being, and again, just general openness to the surroundings. It's always good to see, or interesting to see, with these substances, there is other research going on, seeing, okay, this has interesting effects on the brain. How can we maybe use this in medicine? So really big institutions like Johns Hopkins are looking at this. Essentially what they said with salvia, the subjects described leaving this reality completely and going to other worlds or dimensions and interacting with entities. These are very powerful, very intense experiences. So this is what people are going for when they take this medication or this substance. So here's this video is going to be someone taking salvia. You see, 1 minute later, he's in a different planet. And he keeps saying he feels like his arms, he can't hold his arms down. They keep floating like balloons. You can see, I mean, pretty crazy that something can happen that fast. All right, and then kratom. You guys have probably heard of kratom. I feel like you can't drive down a single block without having a kratom CBD poster somewhere in your face. This is another plant-based substance. It's out of Southeast Asia, especially Thailand and Malaysia. And it's from the leaves of this plant right here is where you get kratom from. And it's an agonist of the mu opioid and the delta opioid and the alpha 2 adrenergic receptors. So kind of a cross reactivity, a lot of receptors. But see, again, here we're starting to tickle the opioid receptors. So this is where you have to start thinking of some ill side effects that we might get from it and not expect from other substances. So it is initially a stimulant. As you take the substance, it hits those alpha-2 receptors, more of a stimulant. But then as you get higher in your doses, it then becomes a respiratory depressant and it starts hitting your opioid receptors a little bit more. So this is another one that you can take in many different forms. You could buy tea packets from the store. You can buy pills, many different ways you can take it. It comes in this nice little package right here. It looks very nice and inviting. Onset within a couple of minutes and then lasts a couple of hours or so. So in low doses, you get your tachycardia, your hypertension, In high doses, you can get actually hypotension and respiratory depression because, again, you're starting to hit your opioid receptors a little more. The positive effects people are going for, you get alertness, energy, euphoria, but they also later can get a depressive crash. So in that video earlier, if you watch it longer, a couple minutes later, the guy's just on the couch like, oh man, just kind of feels like crap. This is great.
Ik word echt heel blij. En hij is zo'n warme deken zo over je heen. Hier van die kriebels, weet je wel. Ik word ook heel klein lachen. Ik word me echt gelukkig, echt blij.
So he's getting that kind of euphoric alertness. Now he's going higher doses. Not feeling so hot. So you can see mimicking more of an opioid response.
Ja, maar je bent echt helemaal veranderd. Een kwartiertje geleden zat je hier.
And this is the crash.
Op de tafel.
So you can see it's interesting to see a dose response there with the medication. So there are case reports of kratom. Again, it's hitting the opioid receptors. So then they start developing case reports of, can we use naloxone to reverse it? And there have been successful cases of naloxone reversal. Also, these patients, there's evidence of similar withdrawal syndromes in chronic users. So you might have someone coming in with looks like an opioid withdrawal syndrome, and they've actually just a chronic kratom user. So pushing a little harder of what, okay, I know you don't take oxycodone, but what are you going to the store to buy? Because this is so readily available. Again, just getting out of my neighborhood, I see probably 10 stores that sells this. People may not understand how potent of a substance this is. This is seen as essentially an herbal substance, but it really, I mean, again, it's hitting the same receptors as oxycodone. And then we'll talk about cannabinoids. Cannabinoids are going to be much more prevalent than we've seen probably 10 years ago. Florida, we have a medical marijuana registry. So it is still federally illegal, but in the state of Florida, if you have a medical marijuana card, you can access quasi-legal marijuana from a store and be able to carry it as well. So we're seeing this a lot more. We see patients all the time now that in their chart, it says medical marijuana user. So a very different environment than we had 10 years ago. Luckily, it's not like we had 10 years ago where the people were accessing K2 and spice. So the first whiffs of legalized marijuana or quasi-legal marijuana was K2 and spice. And essentially, this was a synthetic cannabinoid. So again, made usually in a street lab in a liquid form, and then it would be sprinkled onto dried plant material. So you could roll that up, smoke it, ingest it however you wanted. The problem was being a synthetic, it had some other side effects. And we saw this is very similar to flakka. Again, someone coming in saying, I smoked a joint and they want to kill you. That's not normal pot. Something else is going on. And K2 and spice got really scary. It also came around the same time as Tom's favorite Four Loko. So we had people slamming Four Lokos and doing spice, coming in, gorked out of their minds and really wanting to fight people. So it was. Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting because again, people are smoking weed to get the effects of weed, which let's chill on the couch and play video games, and they came in fighting. So it got scary for a while. I don't think we see this as much anymore, especially with the availability of more medicinal marijuana that is actually a more controlled and has more oversight in its development. As you all know, you can get pot in any form these days, and you can also continue to get kind of spin-offs of marijuana. So when we look at THC, so this is delta 9 THC. So this is what would be what you think as marijuana today. So to get delta 9, you're going to have to go to a dispensary to get actual delta 9 because pot being pot and not hemp and other things is determined by the percentage of delta 9 THC that's in the substance. That is federal law. So to get around this, the very smart people out there just added a little bond on this thing and made this now a Delta 8 THC. So now that's why in Florida and some other states, you can go buy Delta 8 THC down the street right now, and it will have very similar effects as your run-of-the-mill marijuana, but it will be quasi-legal. You can see at the bottom, this was probably a year ago I made this slide, but there was Delta 9, there was Delta 8, Delta 10, THCA, THCV, THCP, THCO, and there's probably 30 more types today. And all varying effects. There are some of these THCs that are 10 times what Delta 9 THC is in terms of the effects. A lot of people say this isn't your grandpa's weed anymore because it's a very different substance than we had before. So it's just important to know that's out there. Some states are trying to get ahead of it and ban anything with a basic THC structure. But again, it's very hard to keep up with very savvy street chemists who are able to come up with the next thing and then market it and sell it. So all these variable effects, variable onset, it depends on the substance you have. It depends on the person taking it. You can take it in any form you can possibly think of. You can take these substances and they're readily available. So CBD is a part of the whole package of THC that gets processed out. It has below the amount of THC percentage that would make it like an illegal substance. So it shouldn't have any THC that would be psychoactive in it. When you start processing marijuana into different components, CBD is a component that comes out of it, and it has some of the theoretically has some effects of the overlying substance in terms of calmness, sleep, pain relief, but doesn't come with the psychoactive effects. As you can see through this, the big push in making these things legal, and this is where it becomes really kind of weird, is it seems to be the fear of the psychoactive effects. And a lot of this goes back decades to the LSD issues and stuff. But again, to my first slide, patients take these for the same effects that we drink a beer for. It's all psychoactive effects. That's where it gets kind of weird to when you get into the legality of this and why are these things actually illegal. But again, the effects of the marijuana substrates, very highly variable, going to be depending on what you take. So, and the list goes on. I'll go through some real quick other things you could go find today pretty easily and have some effects from. So your anticholinergics, your belladonna plant, you'll get some psychoactive effects. That's the deadly nightshade, has atropine and scopolamine in it. Those were some of the original psychedelics with scopolamine. Diphenhydramine, Benadryl, nutmeg. You take enough nutmeg, you'll hallucinate. Did not know that. Amanita muscarina. This is the Mario Brothers mushroom, the red one with the white dots. So this is not a psilocybin-based mushroom, so it's technically not illegal like psilocybin mushrooms are. It is illegal to distribute for human consumption, but it's not illegal to grow and forage and stuff like that. Opioids, so loperamide, Imodium, used for diarrhea. You take enough of that, you get opioid effects. Poppy seeds, obviously a substrate for other drugs, and synthetic opioids. So a lot of synthetic opioids out there, as we know. Dissociatives, dextromethorphan. We've had patients before who just love the cough syrup, and you drink enough of this, and you're going to get dissociate from that. And then hallucinogenics, so LSA plants. So morning glory is an LSA plant. So LSD is what we think about as one of the original hallucinogenics, but there's you could take morning glory, some other plants, and have very similar effects, because many of these substances we talk about originally came from a plant-based source, whether it be tribal or hundreds of years ago, whatever. Usually this was actually derived from a plant-based source, and now we've gone to a synthetic form. Ayahuasca is a combination of different plants and tree barks that can be used for pretty profound multi-day hallucinogenic events. And then kava, you can go to a cafe and order kava, and as a tea, as a drink, and it has some kind of mild hallucinogenic and psychedelic effects. Psilocybin becoming very much more readily available in the US. A lot of really cool data in terms of its effects on PTSD and multi-drug resistant depression out there. So because of that, it is becoming more available, especially in the therapeutic world, in the usual states you'd expect: Colorado, California, Oregon, Washington, where it's available in a therapeutic form. MDMA is also going that way as well. And in some places, it's just decriminalized, where you can have a certain amount of it and they're not going to throw you in jail. So we're seeing a wider spread of that acceptance of psilocybin as a quasi-legal substance. So going back to our patient real quick, he was brought in ultramental status, low GCS, hypoventilating, hypoxic, responded to naloxone. What do you think this guy got? Something he bought in the store. What do you think? What's that? Kratom. So it's kratom patient. So again, it has, when you take high doses of it, it has the same effects as opioids. And there are case reports that actually reverses with naloxone. And the big clue into this is something different. His boys are with him saying he bought this in a store. So you can see something, a very profound effect of a substance that you can actually buy over the counter. And we are running late, so I'm just going to skip the last part. The last part was just treat these people with respect. Don't try to kill them when you're restraining them. It's a whole different lecture. All right, any questions on that real quick? Treatment, there's not even a slide on treatment.